It was inevitable. The truth was always there, even when everything seemed to point in another direction. The signs were scattered, subtle, yet persistent, waiting for the moment they would finally be understood. The conversations that echoed for days, the silences that said more than any words, the glances that carried something unexplainable. Everything was there, present all along, growing without being noticed. And now there's no denying it anymore. It has always been you. The connection was never ordinary. There was something more, something that transcended any logical explanation. The perfect fit that seemed impossible, yet had always been so close. The awareness of this truth carries an unavoidable weight. What if it's too late? What if time, which has so often been wasted on doubts and hesitations, has taken away the only chance that really mattered? But certain bonds cannot be broken. What is real remains, endures, finds a way back. And if there is still room for a new beginning, let it be with the certainty that there are no more uncertainties. Because now it is clear, it has always been you. And what to do with this truth? Ignoring it is impossible. Pretending nothing has changed would be a mistake. What once seemed like a distant suspicion is now an undeniable certainty that cannot be undone. Thoughts swirl, trying to understand how everything fell into place so late. What held back this realization before? Fear, pride, the belief that certain things simply don't happen for everyone. But it happened. It was always there, disguised in the details, in the small gestures, in the coincidences that were not coincidences at all. And now, knowing this changes everything. It makes it impossible to go on as if nothing has been revealed. Because this kind of truth does not stay silent, does not fade away, does not distance itself. It suffocates, consumes, demands to be lived. But what if there isn't enough time left? This is the fear that comes with clarity. Because recognizing the truth is not enough. There are consequences. There are decisions that have already been made, paths that have already been set. And if that truth comes too late, then the pain of acknowledging it can be even greater than never having seen it at all. But perhaps it's not too late. Maybe, despite everything, there's still room for this story to continue. Maybe this has always been the destiny. And if that person knew, how would they react? Would they recognize this truth in the same way? Or would everything have already moved on for them? This is what hurts. Knowing that while this realization arrives now, the other side may feel differently. Time may have done its work. Their heart may have found a new path. What was once an undeniable feeling may have turned into just a memory. What if it's too late? The fear of that paralyzes. Because opening this door means risking encountering an emptiness on the other side. It means admitting not just the truth, but also the vulnerability of exposing it, without guarantees, without certainties, just with the hope that there's still something there. But not knowing is worse. Because carrying this truth alone, hiding this certainty as if it were just a fleeting thought, means living a lie. It means forever bearing the doubt of what could have been. And maybe, just maybe, that person has felt the same way. Perhaps, even without realizing it, they've been waiting for this confession just as much as the one who now carries it in their heart. The moment of decision. There comes a moment when it can't be postponed any longer, when the truth weighs too heavily to be ignored, when the fear of not knowing becomes greater than the fear of the answer. And it's at this moment that a choice must be made, to speak or to remain silent. Revealing this truth means taking risks. It may mean hearing something you don't want to hear, facing a reality you didn't want to confront. But what about not speaking? This means living with doubt, with the feeling that something essential has been left behind. It means allowing destiny to take its course without any attempt to change it. So what is worth more? The safety of not exposing oneself, or the chance, however small, that this story may not have reached its end. Because if this connection was real, if it has always been there waiting to be acknowledged, then perhaps there is still time, perhaps there is still a way. But there's only one way to find out. There's no turning back. Pretending this truth doesn't exist is a losing game. The thought keeps repeating, relentlessly hammering. If it's always been you, then what's still stopping you from saying it? The fear still lingers, clinging like a final remnant of resistance. But it cannot be stronger than this certainty. There are no guarantees. There are no promises. But there is a truth that needs to be spoken. And perhaps, just perhaps, this confession is not the end, but the beginning of something that has always been waiting to happen. What if there's reciprocity? This thought is as frightening as the possibility of silence, because what if there's a yes? What if the answer is what the heart longs to hear? What happens next? This kind of truth changes everything. There's no going back to how things were before. Every word, every glance, every moment will carry a new weight, a new meaning. And that requires courage, because it's not just about admitting a feeling, but being ready to live it. If there's reciprocity, what comes next will be intense, uncontrollable. How do you hold on to something that has always wanted to be free? How do you keep the lost time from demanding to be compensated? It's a risk, but deep down this is the kind of risk that's worth taking, because this connection has never been ordinary. It has never been something fleeting. If it's been you all along, then perhaps this story has been waiting to be written the right way. The first step, the words are there, stuck in the throat. They want to come out, they want to be spoken, but something still holds them back. Maybe it's insecurity, maybe it's the fear of the response, but there's something greater than all of that, the need to be honest with this truth. The moment of hesitation may last a bit longer, but the decision has already been made. The first step needs to be taken. And whatever the response may be, at least this truth will no longer be a doubt. The final question. The choice has been made. The truth will be told. Now there's just one question left. What if there's someone on the other side waiting to hear exactly this? The moment between decision and action is suffocating. The truth can no longer be contained in the chest, but the fear of speaking it keeps everything in suspense. What if it's too late? What if there's no more room for this confession? But the question persists. How to live knowing that something so essential has been silenced? How to move forward with this doubt eating away at every thought, every memory, every little detail that now seems impossible to ignore? The uncertainty will always exist, but there's something greater than it. The weight of never having tried, of never having given this story the chance to happen. So the words need to be spoken. The truth needs a destination. It's not enough to just feel. It's not enough to just know. The truth needs to be delivered, to be placed before those who need to hear it. But how? A simple, "we need to talk," wouldn't be enough. Not for something this significant, this definitive. Because this isn't just any confession. It's the recognition that everything that came before was merely a prelude. That all the doubts, all the hesitations, all the wrong choices were part of an inevitable path leading to this moment. And maybe, just maybe, on the other side, there's someone waiting for this moment, as much as the one who is now preparing to make it real. What happens next? Telling the truth doesn't guarantee control over what comes next. This story may have only two paths, acceptance or denial, but there's one certainty greater than any possible answer. Not knowing is worse than any outcome. Because if that person feels it too, if they carry that doubt, if they question what could have been, then there is something to be lived, something that has always been there, simply waiting for someone to muster the courage to give voice to what already existed in silence. And what if the answer isn't what you expected? Then at least there won't be the torment of uncertainty. Life can move forward without the anguish of what if hovering over every thought. But what if it is? If the answer is yes, if what has been felt all along has never stopped existing, then finally everything may fall into place. Destiny is in motion. The moment between thought and action is the hardest. That's where doubts try to resist, where the mind seeks ways to retreat. But the truth has already been accepted internally. It has become impossible to ignore. And now everything depends on a single gesture, a message, a look that says more than any words. A step forward, without guarantees, without a safety net, only with the certainty that this truth needs to be delivered. Because if it has always been you, then this story should never have been interrupted. And now, what happens next? The answer is already out there. All that remains is to know if destiny is ready to accept it. The weight of the moment before the decision is overwhelming. Hesitation settles in as a last resistance before the inevitable. But there's no going back. The truth has already been felt, understood, and accepted. Now, it needs to be delivered. The heart races, hands tremble before writing, before speaking, before finally making real what has been kept for so long. Because once said, there's no way to pretend that nothing has changed. There's no going back to the point where everything was just a silent doubt. And perhaps that's what scares us, just as much as the possibility of a negative answer. What happens next? The first attempt. The message is written and deleted. The call is initiated and cancelled. The meeting is planned, but the feet hesitate before taking the first step. Because despite all the certainty, fear still tries to keep this truth locked inside the chest. But time does not wait. And putting it off means nurturing the doubt, allowing it to grow and strengthen until it becomes a shadow that's impossible to dispel. So even if the voice fails, even if the hands tremble, even if the heart weighs heavy with uncertainty, it must be said. The truth needs to be spoken. The moment that changes everything, the moment when the confession finally happens, isn't grand nor cinematic. It's raw, real, intense. It may come out hesitantly, perhaps without all the right words, maybe punctuated by silences heavy with meaning. But it comes out. And then the whole world seems to hold its breath. Because the answer, whatever it may be, will change everything. And what if the answer is silence? The waiting is an abyss. Each second without an answer feels like an eternity. What does this silence mean? Doubt, fear, uncertainty, or just a moment needed to process everything that has been said? Because this truth is not small. It carries weight, memories, stories, feelings that may have never been completely resolved. But regardless of the delay, what has been said cannot be taken back. Now, there's nothing left to do but wait. And whatever the answer may be, at least now, there's no more room for regrets. But what if the answer is yes? If the answer comes laden with emotions, hesitant yet full of meaning? If the gaze from the other side reflects the same truth? If, in the end, everything that always seemed impossible to happen finally starts to take shape? Then, every doubt, every hesitation, every fear will have been worth it. Because nothing is rarer than finding what you've always sought without knowing it was already there. And if fate offers this chance, it needs to be lived, without fear, without regrets, completely. And if the answer is no, the heart tightens, but the question needs to be asked. What if it's not mutual? What if time, circumstances, and past choices have led this story to a point of no return? That possibility exists, it always has. But the pain of a no is less than the eternal torture of what if, because at least now the answer was sought. What needed to be said has been said. And that is freedom. Whatever comes next will be a consequence, but never a regret. So what happens now? Now fate responds. Now everything that was repressed, ignored, and silenced finds a way to exist. Now there's a new beginning, whatever that may be, and whatever the answer is, the certainty that nothing has been left behind will be enough to move forward. Because what was trapped inside the chest has finally found its place. Fate has already received the truth. Now it needs to decide what to do with it. The waiting becomes a minefield of thoughts. Every second without an answer opens up space for a new possibility, a new doubt, a new fear. But the truth has already been delivered. Now all that's left is to cope with whatever comes next. The heart oscillates between hope and resignation, because whatever the answer, fate has already been set in motion. And that changes everything. Now there's no longer the illusion of control. The silence from the other side could mean anything. Hesitation, surprise, or even a feeling that can't be expressed in words so quickly. But there is one undeniable certainty. The worst pain would be never having tried. The first sign. So, something happens. Maybe it's a notification, maybe a different look when paths finally cross, maybe just a simple gesture that reveals the words have been heard, felt, absorbed. It's a moment filled with possibilities, and now everything depends on the response that is about to be given. Destiny held that confession in its hands and will now decide what to do with it. The response that defines the future. And then it comes, maybe in hesitant words, maybe in a look that says more than any phrase could express. But either way, it is a definitive answer. If it's a yes, everything changes. The lost time no longer matters, because what exists now is a real chance. A door that has finally opened to something that has always been there, but was never lived in the way it should have been. If it's a no, the pain will be inevitable, but there will be no regret. Because the doubt will have been pulled out by the roots. What was a silent burden is now simply a clear answer, and as hard as it is, this too is a form of liberation. But what matters in the end is that there are no more unanswered questions. Now the path is clear, and whichever it is, it will be walked without looking back. Life goes on, but nothing will be the same. After this moment, there is no returning to what existed before. If it is the beginning of something new, it will be intense, overwhelming, impossible to ignore. If it is the closing of a story that never happened, still there is something that cannot be undone. The truth has been spoken, and that will always be greater than any response. Now the uncertainty is gone, and with it, everything that was once a weight on the chest. What remains is to move forward, ahead, to whatever comes, to the story that destiny decided to tell from this moment on. Because one way or another, everything has always been leading to this moment. The end that is not an end now, everything depends on what was answered. But one thing is certain, nothing was wasted. If there was reciprocity, then this story still has chapters to be written. If there wasn't, then the courage to speak up was the greatest victory. Because to love, to feel, and to have the courage to express oneself will always be greater than any fear of loss. The silence has been broken. Destiny answered. And now, life begins anew. The truth has been spoken. Destiny responded. Now tell us, have you ever experienced something like this? Subscribe, leave a like, and share.